Welcome to the Social Chameleon Show, where it's our goal to help you learn, grow, and transform into the person you want to become. On this episode of the Social Chameleon Show, we welcome Michael Kramer, a highly successful real estate investor and business leader. Inspired by a deeply personal tragedy, Michael vowed to break his family's cycle of financial insecurity. He launched his career by becoming the top-ranking franchisee, eventually expanding into real estate, where he now manages a $40 million portfolio and leads 10 real estate-focused businesses. Michael's journey is also one of resilience. After a life-changing accident in 2016, he shifted his strategy, accumulating a portfolio of over 400 residential units and 1,000 units. Mike, today, as CEO and founder of Freed by Real Estate, he guides others towards financial freedom. Mike is also an Amazon bestseller, co-authoring Empathetic Leadership with renowned FBI negotiator Chris Voss. His insights on tactical empathy reflect a powerful blend of compassion and strategy in both life and leadership. Please join us as we explore Michael's inspiring story and his unique approach to wealth building, creating impact, and leading with empathy. He is very vulnerable. I hope everybody out there, if you're struggling with anything, if you're going through things, I really hope that you can take away something from this, from how Michael was talking about this, or if you know somebody that's going through this, maybe this is something you should share with them. Without further ado, let's talk to Michael. Michael, welcome to the Social Chameleon Show.
Thank you, Tyson. It's great to be here.
I'd like to start off maybe, and then maybe hopefully a different place than maybe most people would. As I was reading things your team and stuff sent over and things about you, I noticed you had a tragic incident where you lost vision in your eye. I'm not sure how that kind of turned out. If as much of the stories you want to share, maybe a TLDR, how much of you want to share? I'd like to learn about what happened and then how that's kind of finish off, how that progressed.
Yeah, for sure. So July 4th, 2016, if you're thinking 4th of July accident, that's what everyone else thought, but that's not what it was.
Okay.
Pardon me. Actually, my wife and I woke up that morning and we had been working on a flip house together. And we said, well, we have plans this afternoon, but let's go get a few things progressed on the flip house. So that was our plan. We were going to spend a couple hours and then head off and enjoy the rest of the day and fireworks and all the festivities. So we walk into this house. It's in the center of Omaha, and it's an old house. It was built in the 1920s, and we had just sanded the floors, oak wood floors. And in an older house, how the floors are imperfect. So there's lots of cracks and imperfections. And because it had just been sanded, we're trying to protect it so that we don't stain it with anything, right? So when we go back with the finish, it looks beautiful.
Right.
Well, right about the time we walk in, my wife doesn't see a can of paint sitting on the floor, and she kicks it over, and the lid wasn't on it. So white paint spills all over the floor. Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine the paint soaking in, and we're hustling to try to clean it all up. Mm-hmm. It took us about an hour because we were just wanting to make sure nothing was ruined.
Right.
And frustrated, she's like, let's go. I just want to be done. Like, this isn't our day. And I said, well, I haven't accomplished anything. Let me put up one piece of trim so I don't feel like a complete waste of my day. I didn't want to show up here and clean up paint. So let me put up one piece of trim. So I go in the bathroom, and behind the toilet, there's a piece of trim between the vanity and the wall. And then from the wall to the doorway where it returned, I had that one piece I wanted to install. Well, the wall had a little bit of a bow in it. And it was a plaster and lath wall, which meant the thickness of that wall was varying, but it was really thick. Mm-hmm. And face nailing it, I wasn't getting the nails to bite. So I bent the board with my hand, and with the other, I used the air nailer and shot a nail to toenail the one piece of trim into the other and hold it in place while I glued it. And while the glue dried, it would stay. Mm-hmm. I hit the nail gun. I see a spark. The nail comes back. Goes into the center of my pupil, not glancing below, not like, ooh, this poked me and it fell out. I sat back on my knees, or I was on my knees. I sat back on my feet, and I felt, my face was wet. So I wiped my face and I looked at my hand thinking it was blood, and it wasn't. It was clear. So without getting too graphic, you probably can imagine,
right,
what was coming out of my eye. Mm-hmm. And so I just sort of in shock, I pulled the nail out. And I learned later at the doctor I shouldn't have done that, but I did because I didn't, it's a natural instinct. Mm-hmm. And my wife quickly rushes me to the hospital, and yeah, they thought I had a fireworks accident, but it turned out it was a nail gun accident.
Mhm.
And it did cost me my vision. I've had multiple surgeries since,
Wow.
and a cornea transplant. So I'm really grateful for organ donors. And today you can't really see, if you look at me, you don't notice that there's a problem. But I certainly do, because I can't see anything on this side. And I've lost my depth perception. So
Interesting.
that changed our business significantly, because while we were doing some fix and flip stuff and I was using my hands, when you lose your depth perception, you lose your confidence, because I'm working with, saws and nail guns and getting on ladders and doing different things. And I just didn't feel safe to do that anymore, because I can't really see where I'm at in space.
Mhm.
And so it was at that moment where we said, my wife really suggested during the recovery, she said, let's stop focusing on you doing the work and let's start buying some assets, holding them, allowing the crews to finish the jobs, but then let's hold these assets for some passive income. In the event you get injured again, or, maybe something worse happens, at least the family will have some income. So that's what we did starting in 2016.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's an interesting story. I mean, goes to show people, listen, put your goggles on, PPE. I mean, we got
That's
eye
it.
protection, especially I think a lot of us older guys, it's like, listen, I don't want to put these on. Like sometimes you can't see very well.
You can't.
Humid. And there's a lot of alternatives now. I know I've seen some there've been some big developments in like shop shades and stuff like that. I think that's actually a brand where it is a little bit better to see, but man, boy, the importance of that. I got a piece of metal in my eye. Nothing like that happened. That is incredible. What was the hardest part of that? Was it like the coming to the terms with, maybe permanently losing your vision, or what was it that was the hardest part of that experience for you?
There was some pity for myself, right after the accident, where, feeling sorry for myself and thinking, man, I'm never going to be the same, and vanity issues. Because right after that, everyone is asking me about what happened. And it was just exhausting because it didn't look normal. And I'm like, am I going to end up with a glass eye? So it just, those kinds of vanity, which I'm a little embarrassed to even admit, because I was, looking back, that happened. One of my favorite sayings, things happen for us, not to us.
Right.
And this happened for me, because had I not had that happen, I don't know if that I would have ever bought and held real estate, Tyson. I think I would have continued to work with my hands, mostly because I enjoyed it and I was good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the hardest thing for me was just coming to terms with, I had to do something different than what I was really passionate about. But it turned out to be way better. We now have, a portfolio of over 400 units, and
right.
our family's life will never be the same financially because of that accident. And so while it was difficult at the time and I was feeling sorry for myself, we worked our way through it. And by God's grace, nobody really can tell now. Mm-hmm. And we're on a much better path than I was before and ever thought I would be, frankly.
Yeah, it's good to share. I like that. That's real. People need to, I think, we all go through things. Maybe we feel insecure about something or whatever it is. I love that you share that you were able to reframe that. What was the self-talk like? Were you like this before? And this was something you were able to kind of, push through? How was that like?
There were, Tyson, there were some dark days, because mm-hmm. I had, and I'm going to tell you about a level of pain that is going to seem maybe insignificant to those listening, maybe have experienced much worse pain than this. But I had never felt pain like this. For the couple of days after the surgery, there was zero pain. I don't really remember having pain the day of, and I didn't really have pain for a few days after. And then I entered into this dark phase of not being able to, my hair hurt. If you drew a line down my face, I couldn't touch even my face. My teeth hurt. Everything hurt. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, couldn't sleep, just rocking back and forth, sweating, because the pain was so unbearable. And the image that came to mind was, I'm a person of faith, and when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane and was bleeding or sweating blood, like I was somehow relating to that moment, although I imagine that was much, much worse, because he was about to be crucified. But that's how I felt, was like, I was ready to go, like, take me, because this sucks. So I'll tell you, for a few days, the self-talk was, I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
It was miserable. And the pain pills didn't touch it. And I also, this is maybe a pride issue.
Mhm.
I also didn't want to overdo the pain pills and I was a little afraid of being addicted to it. And I had seen how
Especially opiates and stuff nowadays.
Exactly. That had wrecked some other people that I knew, like close friends. And I just was scared of that. So I was trying to tough my way through it, I guess. But after that period, and I got through those surgeries, and the pain kind of went away, and you're readjusting your reality to like what you can see and can't see, and what you can do and can't do. I remember just a quick story. We're on the front lawn with my boy. I've got 2 boys, and we are all sports fanatics. And we're out playing wiffle ball, and the boys are hitting, and one of the kids hit the ball, and it came back and hit me straight in the mouth.
You couldn't see it.
I couldn't see it coming.
Wow.
And I was like, it was so frustrating. And so now they still make fun of me because I can't play ping pong or anything that I really used to enjoy.
Mhm.
If you want some comic relief, take me golfing. But,
you gotta switch it.
Yeah, exactly. But back to your question, I think in the days after, and adjusting through some of the ego and vanity things, which again I'm not real proud to admit that I was dealing with that. It was really the moment where my wife said, "Hey, we're gonna be okay, and I've got your back," to be able to say there is something here for us, and I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna just do the next right thing and step out in faith and trust that the skills that got me here will serve me going forward. I just have to figure out what new skills I need to adapt and learn and adopt rather. And so it took some time, but I will tell you that I was introduced to a gentleman named Sean Terry that has a course called Flip to Freedom. And I ended up buying that course shortly after the injury, just trying to see how does he do real estate, and maybe there's a way I could borrow some of his inspiration. And it really kind of lit a fire under me, because he laid out, here's how the contracts work. Here's how the process works. It was a wholesaling business model.
Okay.
Where you're basically, are you familiar with how wholesaling works?
I am, but please enlighten the audience.
Yeah. So what's cool about wholesaling is you buy a property, or you put a property under contract. And when you have this contract, it's the A party is the owner of the property. I'm the B party. So I have an A-B contract, and I own this piece of paper. I don't own the property just yet. And I find a C party, which is a buyer, and I assign or sell this contract to that C party, and they end up closing on the property. And you make a spread on whatever, if you have it under contract for $50,000 and you sell it for $70,000, you make $20,000 and you never own the property.
Right.
And when I learned that, I thought there's no way this is real. There's no way this is legal. If it is true, everybody would be doing it.
Right.
But I learned, and at that time in Nebraska, which is where I'm based, it was still legal to do that. It's now illegal to do that. You can't.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can't sell that paper. Well, that's not true. It isn't illegal to do that. It's illegal to advertise unless you have an agent. So if I have equitable interest in AB contract, I can list that contract for sale, but a realtor has to do it, and they need to be paid commissions and follow the realtor rules. And so, but yeah, that was a business that we started in, and when I learned about it and I understood it, and I started, I remember the very first deal I did. I was on vacation with my family in Arkansas, excuse me. Mm-hmm. And I got a call from somebody that was in pre-foreclosure, and they were just about to lose their house. And I said, I think I can help you. I think I can prevent this foreclosure. I ran the numbers. I had a PropStream, a software with me. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the comparables, and I said, I think there's an opportunity here. And so I agreed while in Arkansas, which my kids hate this story because we were on vacation. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
But I was trying to figure out, what was next. Mm-hmm. I ended up getting into the contract. And within a week, I sold it to somebody else, and I made $10,000. It saved the homeowner's credit. Mm-hmm. They didn't go through the foreclosure, which was that's a really fun part of that story, because a lot of times people hate wholesalers. But in these instances where you truly do help somebody who's in trouble, it's very rewarding. And that's sort of what lit the fire under me to do more of that. And that's how we got started in building enough cash to then end up buying more real estate to hold.
Right. Yeah, that I could see how they would outlaw that, because you could potentially see that person acting as a realtor but not being one. So I could see how they would like try to close that up a little bit, so maybe people don't get into tough positions, like you're saying. You were helping somebody, but I could see how other people maybe would take advantage of people. So that's
Tyson, it's very common, and that's, I think, why wholesalers do get a bad rap, because there's a very low barrier to entry. You need no licensing, no experience. You just need to understand how to write the contract. And you have to balance this delicate balance between the A party and the C party, because as the middle person, they're saying, I thought you were buying this. As the A party says, I thought you were buying this house, Mike. And the C party says, do you own this house? Right. And so you have to just disclose what's happening, be comfortable sharing that, and be comfortable living in that sort of messy middle. And if you aren't comfortable with that, then games can start to be played, and that's where it gets shady.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine that. I think I'd like to get back to some real stuff a little bit later. I'd like to circle back a little bit. It's amazing. It sounds like you have a great wife, a great partner. And I can imagine that having a partner, having a ally, having somebody in your corner, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your not, maybe it's a friend or something like that, really was probably from what I'm hearing is the catalyst to your recovery and to you getting out of that dark place and getting through that. Am I hearing this correctly?
No question. Yeah, Lucy's my wife. She's incredible. She's my business partner to this day. She's our CFO.
Nice.
She handles all of the back end stuff and really is the glue to our operation.
Is there any other resources, maybe books or things that helped you through this dark time?
Yes. Yeah. So let me go back even before this, because there was an earlier sort of failure, I guess, that precipitated all of this. And it was when my mom came to me. I'm her youngest son. I've got 4 brothers and 5 sisters. So there's 10 in our family. And my mom came to me and told me that she didn't have $600 to dig my father's grave.
Oh, man.
Tyson, the night before he had died in our living room after a 3-year battle with cancer. And so if you can imagine, I'm grieving the loss of my father, my hero, a man I looked up to and wanted to be. And then I see this look on my mom's face. She's also grieving, but now she's on top of that, terrified. She has no money. How is she going to take care of her family? How is she going to take care of herself? And I remember thinking, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure this never happens again. And I became obsessed with making money.
Right.
Fast forward I didn't know how. I'm a young man at this time. Fast forward a few years, I ended up buying a business and became very successful in this business. It was a franchise operation, and I had 5 locations. I was the fastest growing the first year and the largest sales volume the second and third year. I'm speaking at the national conventions. I'd made it.
Right.
But it cost me my wife. My marriage to my first wife ended because of my pursuit. Single-minded, single-focused pursuit on building wealth. And while I felt like I financially had made it, I had failed my family. And the irony of that really struck me after the convention and the divorce happened. And I say, my dad was a great father, a great husband, but a terrible businessman. And now here I am, a great businessman and a terrible husband and father. And so, so we set out to fix that. And one of the books, or I set out to fix that. One of the books that I read that helped me pivot my thinking and really shape my thinking, there's actually 2 that come to mind. The first was Crucial Conversations.
Okay.
And that book, the basic premise of the book is a crucial conversation is defined as a conversation where the stakes are high, where opinions vary, and where emotions are strong. And interestingly, in real estate, almost every conversation is a crucial conversation by that definition, right?
Right.
Some buyers and sellers thinking the prices are different. There's strong emotions. The opinions are different. There's a lot on the line. And so that book really helped me see that I wasn't a bad communicator. I had written off this failed marriage to, I'm good in business, but I'm not good in relationships. And I learned through that book that I was wrong.
Mhm.
I just wasn't, I had been thinking of people for so many years, Tyson, as how are you going to help me get where I want to go?
Oh,
And if you
selfish.
don't, very selfish,
Mm.
very utilitarian. If you're not going to help me, get out of my way. I'm on a mission. And it cost me my most important relationship.
Mhm.
So reading that book helped me see I can have these conversations with people I care about. And on top of that, or shortly after that, I was introduced to a book called Never Split the Difference.
Oh, love that book.
Yeah, written by Chris Voss. That book gave me the tools to apply what I learned in Crucial Conversations. Crucial Conversations was more like reading a textbook. It was a little tough to read.
Yeah.
But Never Split the Difference was more like reading, a guidebook. Here's how to practice these tools. And I took that hook, line, and sinker and ran with it. And it completely changed who I am as a person. The tools of tactical empathy, which the reason I bought the book was because it was a book about negotiation.
Right.
I'm thinking I'm going to be a better negotiator. And it turned out to be a book that changed who I am. It changed how I think. My whole paradigm shifted. Instead of how can you serve me, I became really curious about what's motivating other people and asking instead, what can you do for me? Saying, what can we do together? And that little shift completely changed who I am. I actually went on to co-author a book with Chris Voss. And that was, one of the highlights in my life to this point.
Right.
But from there, my relationships got better. Now 12 family members work in the business. My wife, who I was dating during this period, became my wife. Our relationship has been phenomenal. And I attribute a lot of that to these books that I just mentioned. But also, more importantly, I'd say the practice of actually deploying the tactical empathy.
Thank you. So you've been so vulnerable so far. Thank you so much. I think there's a lot here. I mean, you took this tragedy, like you saw it earlier, and you took it as an opportunity to completely change your life. And that's commendable. I really hope you guys out there listening, you guys can be inspired by this. You could have easily said, my life's over. I shit the bucket. And
Yeah, that's right.
People probably wouldn't have blamed you if you became an alcoholic, maybe you did drugs. Like, hey, man, you know what happened to him? I mean, I don't blame him, right? And it would have been so easy to do that. But for whatever reason, you didn't do that. And now you're an inspiration in you could take this tragedy. You spent that time in the darkness and you got out of it and you flipped it. And now you can let everybody know, like, you guys can do this too. And I think there's a lot of power there. Thank you very much for sharing this.
Well, I think, Tyson, that this human spirit within all of us is it's really indomitable if we are willing to, I'm going to say, remain curious about what's happening to us. Because if we remain curious about it, there is something in there for us. It is intended to be, I like to say, we win or we learn. And a lot of times the lessons are way more valuable than the wins. Because if we are remaining curious, and instead of saying, this sucks, I'm a victim, which, full disclosure, after the divorce, I lived in an RV and rode my bicycle every day for probably 6 months. Like I wanted nothing to do with anybody because I felt like such a failure. And I needed to reconcile this journey that I had been on for 15 years to create wealth.
Yeah.
That culminates in a big business and a big success on stage moment, all of this stuff, only to cost me my family. And that's really what I was doing it for. And so there was a period of like, I ate Reese's Pieces, I drank tequila, and I rode my bike.
Yeah.
So please don't, I don't want to sugarcoat that I'm some, superhero thinker, that I have all these attributes that others can aspire to. I'm just a really inquisitive, like I want to be honest first with myself and ask myself the hard questions. What can I learn from it? How can I be a better person for this? And it's your brain's a computer. It answers the questions you ask of it. It does not think for itself. It's guided by our unction, our desires, whatever that spirit is telling us. And so if we listen to it and we're patient and can sit with it for a while, I think more often than not, good can come out of it. Even if there's moments of darkness in there, even if there's moments of fuzziness because of the tequila and Reese's Pieces, but overall, I'm grateful for the journey, and I'm glad I came out on the other side.
Yeah, and that is a lesson. I'm not trying to. Hopefully, I didn't try to make you out a superhero, but the lesson I think is like you're saying, it is possible once you go through that, once you're there, and you make that decision, like, fuck, I gotta stop drinking.
Yes.
I gotta stop this. And maybe you don't know how to get going, but just I think the thought of saying I gotta stop and I gotta go a different way, and that's the beginning, I think, of a new chapter right there.
It is absolutely. And I do think it all comes back to what I mentioned earlier, which is this indomitable spirit that we're all given. Like, we're here for a reason. And if the reason is to fizzle out or to fade away, then that's I think a failure for us to recognize our purpose. And maybe I'm too idealistic or too like altruistic in my views, but that's what drives me, is to say, I'm here to serve others. I'm here for a purpose. And that's even to this day, what we do in business. It's all about serving other families, helping them create generational wealth through real estate, and helping them keep their families together at the same time. Because on one hand, you can say, I want to drive and create wealth. And I trust me, I can help you do that. I've done it, and I will continue to. But more important than that, if you don't have the people that you love to share it with, and if at the end, when you're gone, they fight over it because they want it more than they want each other, then I have failed in my mission. And so it's really important to me to not only, be good at building something and making money. That's, I think, the relatively easy part, frankly. The more difficult and the higher calling, if you will, is to make sure that my family along the way is together and has harmony. It isn't always perfect. There's a lot of ups and downs, but we're very intentional about making sure there's harmony among the family. And most importantly, thinking about the generations after I'm gone, the ones I don't even know yet, to make sure that harmony, will continue on. Because if I don't do that, if I'm not intentional about that and trying to plant those seeds in those I do have direct contact with, then the odds of it succeeding into the future diminish greatly. And then my legacy, which is ultimately what matters most to me at this point in my life, is one of a failed dad or a failed businessman. And I just don't want that pain for my family, or any families.
Right. Are these lessons you took from your father's tragedy?
Largely, and my own failure in my marriage. Those two are kind of the two big, I'm going to say, pivotal moments in my life. The two biggest, like, earth shaking, is life over moments, where you do contemplate, is this worth living? And, I by God's grace would say I'm grateful to say I've never really contemplated suicide. I've had some friends who have committed suicide, and I've wondered how they've thought about it and what led them there. But I've never felt to that point where I'd say it's not worth it. But those are the two moments where I've gotten the closest, I'd say, to say, what is this all about? And is this worth the effort? Because I thought it was, and it wasn't. It failed. And so those are really heavy and hard lessons to learn. But this is a big but. If they're used to fuel you towards something that is inspiring, something that is going to be lasting, then it's worth it. And I wouldn't looking back, I wouldn't trade those things as hard as they were. I wouldn't trade those. And the eye injury and a few other little things along the way. They've been instrumental too. But the two sort of earth shattering, rocking my world, were dad dying and the divorce.
Right. And that leads me to something I was reading through your things, where you're talking about 100-year plan. Could you talk us through 100 years? That sounds absolutely absurd.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, and sad, frankly, is that so many of us don't think past really the next paycheck.
Right.
And are thinking about planning for family in the future is abstract because we're feeling so much pain ourselves today.
Right.
And so how do you rise above that? How do you rise above, I need to pay my own rent and buy my own groceries, and I've got my own kids I'm trying to raise and, keep out of the prison and off the pole, depending upon what sex they are.
Right.
And so it can feel a little bit like elusive for people to think that way. And I do think it comes down to intention and how do you want to be remembered? And some of it has to do with when I get older. I think more that way and these tragedies along the way. But the reason we said 100 years is because there's an adage, maybe you've heard it, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations.
Right.
Where, and I actually like the way Joe Rogan says it, which I'm going to butcher if I try to say it. But basically there's strong men create easy times create soft men create hard times. That's a 3-generation cycle, where a simpler way of saying it is the first generation buys something, the second generation builds it, the third generation sells it. And so by the 4th generation, they start over, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And so if a generation is 25 years, that's 75 years. What I bought will be gone because my grandkids will sell it. So in order for me to think, or in order for the 4th generation to get it, I got to think about them and I have to plan for them. And so I'm saving and building and growing something that is for the grandkids or the great grandkids that I don't even know and may never meet. But if I have some planning and some thought into it, and I'm planting those seeds in my kids and asking them to plant those seeds into their kids, there's a chance it can endure. And what I will tell you is, without planning, without thinking about that 4th generation, 100 years from now, they will be left starting over, because that is a repeatable pattern. And it's true for all cultures, all parts of the world.
Right.
It's a human thing. And so to break that cycle of poverty, we have to be thoughtful and intentional about it. So that's why we do that.
Is this just mentoring, teaching philosophy? Or are you also using like trusts and things and legal things to kind of prevent things from happening?
Yeah, great question. It starts with philosophy, but then it turns into actual instruments, which in our case, we're using trusts to do so. We're building what's called a dynasty trust right now. But what's interesting, Tyson, is the beginning of that, for us, is what we call a family constitution. It's a borrowed term. I didn't create that by any means. But if you think about the U.S. Constitution and how that has guided us for hundreds of years, and we come back to it and we talk about it often as a people, right? And whether you agree or disagree or how it should be changed, that's all up for debate, and that's okay. But we all come back to that document. And that's what I wanted to give to my family for generations to come, is to say, who are the Kramers? What do we stand for? What are we about? What are we going to tolerate and not tolerate? And have it be a framing that then they can refer to in the future to say, if you're part of this trust and you're part of this dynasty, then this is how you're going to have to uphold yourself or conduct yourself in order to participate. And to be a tool or a framing to say, you don't comply, then we have no obligation to help you. In other words, if you do end up, being the guy that's a bonehead and is hurting people and ends up, going down the wrong path, that's going to be a choice that we won't have to honor your financial security or your access to the trust, if you will. So it acts as a governing tool. The trust itself, without that sort of governing tool, the Constitution, I think falls short. And so that's why we started with that Constitution.
Is there a framework either you can point us to or that you use to set this foundation? Like, so the listeners out there are like, hey, this sounds interesting. Where can we start? Like, how do we start thinking about this?
Yeah. So there's a couple of books that I've read. One that comes to mind that actually I'm just finishing is called 7 Generations Legacy. And that comes to mind as one that I've just finished, and it gives a pretty good framework. Let me give you another one here that was kind of the precursor to that. I got to get to my Audible. Bear with me. Because part of it is everything is created usually 3 times, but first it's always created in our mind. And then secondly, it's a draft on paper of some kind. And thirdly, if it's a physical structure, it'll get built. So the first one is 7 Generations Legacy by Rachel Marshall.
Okay.
And she's got a whole bunch of workflows and processes that she can lead you through. And the other one is The Intentional Legacy, David McElvaney.
Okay.
those would be two that I'd recommend for people that are interested in that kind of thing. And the other piece too, if we're talking about trusts, not all trusts are created equal,
right?
And not all trust attorneys can truly understand what you're trying to accomplish. Many times, and I'll use a simple example. If you go to the doctor and say, "Hey, I have this pain, maybe my finger hurts," they'll probably refer you to an ortho if it's truly a structural issue. And when you go to the ortho, they're probably going to say, "Yeah, I can fix that, and you need surgery on it," because that's their paradigm. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily.
Sure.
But the same is true in the legal business, where if you have somebody who's really good at doing family law, and they haven't done a lot of trust work, they might suggest maybe it's a living will as a first step, and then maybe it is a living trust or a revocable trust. And you have to really think about, while these are all tools, does that tool truly serve what you're trying to accomplish? For us in a dynasty trust, we're looking at something that's irrevocable. We're looking at something that can never be changed.
Right.
And that can be a little bit daunting. And so to have a guide, somebody who's gone down that path before and led other families to do similar work, is really, really important, because not all doctors are equal. Not all, trust attorneys are equal, et cetera. And so to dig into that, and I'm saying it to hear it, because I've spent the last 3 or 4 years just interviewing different attorneys and looking at different kinds of trusts and figuring out what it is that we actually need to serve this 100-year plan.
What about for your folks' family constitution? What are the frameworks you guys use for that? Is there something you can maybe share so people can start thinking about that?
Yeah, I would use the framework that the 7 generation legacy, the one I just
so there. Okay.
She has a website, and I think it's even a list of questions, if I remember right.
Okay.
That she guides you through to ask and answer. So that's a really good place to start.
Perfect. And don't worry, folks, if you're driving or walking or whatever, I'll link to this in the show notes for you guys so you can easily get to those things. That's interesting to think about. I've heard of some corporation stuff. I think I want to say Mitsubishi or something. They have like a 300-year plan, and some other people have 500 and 1,000-year plans. So I'm very fascinated by this concept, and I've been starting to think about this. I'm like you're saying, if you're not thinking, and like you preface as well, it's hard if you're trying to put food on the table. It's hard to maybe start there, and then we work our way over. But I've been starting to think about this too. If you're thinking so far ahead, it really changes your choices today.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It becomes a filter, Tyson.
Right.
Like it's a really, really powerful, when you have this perspective, it becomes a really powerful filter for things to say yes and no to. Right. And interestingly, it's caused me to say no to almost everything, because the few things that I know are going to help facilitate where we're going is all we focus on. And so think about the power of that focus and the how it increases the probability of it actually coming to fruition, right?
Right. You have rules and frameworks. You're like, I don't do this. I don't spend money on that. It's easy to make those decisions.
That's it. No, that's right. And by the way, it doesn't feel like you're, when you say no to it, it doesn't feel like you're giving something up. You recognize that it's not giving something up. It's actually helping you to stay focused on what you really want, right? Don't trade what you want now for what you really want in the future, because a lot of times that immediate gratification is at the expense of, and I know it's easy to say when you're trying to do legacy planning and have that mindset. And for those that are not there, I have empathy, because I told you earlier on in this podcast, like, I saw the look on my mom's face when she didn't have $600 and she's got 10 kids. I mean, it's we're in the greatest place on the planet to be able to do what I do and what anybody here can do, whether it's through real estate or some other vehicle that builds wealth. But my goodness, what a great place to be, and what a great opportunity to do it if you so choose.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common story in America, and unfortunately, that people don't have somewhere, depends on who you listen to, between $400 and $600 for an emergency.
Yeah,
and it does suck, and it is tragic. But I think if you're not there yet, listen, you're hearing us, and you can start building that way. You've got this thought in your head now. These guys have done it. Michael has built a massive legacy. He's built this stuff. He's built wealth. He's from what it sounds like to me, you've helped your family. You've brought all these people. You lifted them out of poverty. So you can be drinking tequila and eating Reese's peanut butter cups, and know, like, I know somebody else can do this. I can do this too. And you're just a testament to that. And I know it's hard. I know it's like, yeah, okay, you guys, you don't get it. I can't afford groceries. No, listen, I get it. I lived in my car. I couldn't afford groceries either. And I know what it takes to kind of get there. And it can be done, just a little bit at a time, one day at a time. Like you're saying, if you have that plan, you can start making these decisions, start making these choices, throwing some change in a jar, whatever you got to do to start changing that.
That's right. No, I love that, because it isn't a, when you look at me now, you might say, man, what an overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, it's all these little decisions along the way. It's every quarter that you see goes in the jar, to use your analogy. And pretty soon you have a jar full of quarters that you can trade for something else.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's believing first that it's possible, and then acting in faith. It's taking that doing the next right thing, taking that step in faith, because unless you take action, all of the best ideas and all the plans are useless.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to start somewhere. So the other piece I would suggest as you're talking about this, that comes to mind is, and you asked some good questions about which books or resources, because I think each of us need a guide along the way, right? We need somebody who's willing to give us a hand up and help us. And one of my favorite sayings came from I'm a Husker football fan. So our head football coach said this in a press conference in the last few weeks. He said, never take advice from somebody you wouldn't trade places with.
Right.
And never accept criticism from those you're not taking advice from. In other words, be very careful who you listen to. And I think so many people, especially those that are struggling and not feeling inspired, oftentimes they're listening to voices that of people and taking advice from people that they would never want to trade places with. They'd never want to be like those people. And it could be, sadly, it could be your own parents.
Right.
I love my mother to death, but my mother has poverty consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
My mother raised 10 kids and didn't have any money. Mm-hmm. So the advice I take from her is not advice on money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to trade places with her financially.
Right.
So the lesson there, I think, is to look at somebody who's done it before.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what they did. And as Zig Ziglar says, if you want to be successful, do what successful people do. So get yourself in the room, whether it's through a book, through a podcast, through going to some social event, or find a mentor. Or if you have capital, and you want to invest in a coaching program or a mastermind, or even invest in real estate. I mean, that's what we do.
Right.
We bring families in to help other people to elevate themselves. And when they start to get some traction and they start to pick up some momentum, then those steps just get bigger and more powerful, and it starts to compound. It's all about energy pointed in the right direction, but you got to act.
Yeah. And listen, if things are free, folks out there, there's the library. You can get library books on your phone if you have a library card on your computer. There's no obstacles to this stuff. If you guys remember my previous guest, Faroe, he lived in New York City. He walked to the library from the ghetto. If you want it, there's things out there, guys. We have so much access to information. We need to access it. So don't think that you don't have money for Audible subscriptions or books or things like that. If you don't at the moment, there's free options out there. And it's the thing too, like I tell my wife, I don't know if I want to buy this book. I'm like, listen, this person spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of their life. So you can spend $23 for a book and everything in it. That's the best investment you can ever make. So don't think about those things as a waste.
Well, and you mentioned if you have a library card, you can get free books on your phone. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what that app is called?
I'm aware of Libby. I will link to it in the show notes for you guys. And as long as you just link your library card, you can there's a browser extension. When you're on Amazon, it'll pop up and show you that the book you're looking at on Amazon is available at your public library and where you can get it. So it's very, very simple. My wife loves the Libby app. She doesn't spend money on books. She just likes them on her phone. I like Audible. You can get Audible books as well. Sometimes they're exclusive to Audible, so I have to buy them. Or I like physical books, but those are options.
Yeah, and then there's one other I'd suggest that maybe you could link to the
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
show notes as well. It's called Overdrive.
Oh, Overdrive is great too. Yes.
Yeah,
And if you're in the
similar to
military,
like,
we used to get that for free.
okay, yeah. Well, I think there is a free version of Overdrive because I've used it for free for years
Oh, perfect.
until I, got spoiled and my wife bought me Audible for Christmas, and
Yes.
so now that's all I use.
Yes.
But and I like how going back to Zig Ziglar, he said when you're in the car, it should be Automobile University, right?
100%.
There's great music, which I love, and I get sucked into the radio, sports talk, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But if you have a 30-minute commute, that's a 30-minute class you could have every day, listening to some kind of a book that's either inspiring you or teaching you. And that intellectual property, that's something that no one can take from you, no matter what your economic status is. And the knowledge, if it's applied, is super powerful. And I love the content that you're drawing out of me and the conversation that we're having here, because I think there's so much that can help people if they just reach out and grab it.
Absolutely. And that was the hope of this conversation. Like I said, I seen a couple of things in here, and I was like, there's got to be lessons in there. And I'm glad you've been able to not only share them graciously, but you did extract some good lessons there. You were in a dark place, which a lot of people use as an excuse. And I don't know. It's probably hard. I've never been there. I'm not casting judgment, but I'm letting you guys know there is a way out. And that's
Yes.
what I like. I love hearing from you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Speaking of that, so you said earlier you were the number one operator. You had a franchise. Why leave? Why sell? That's like, I got a solid job. I'm sure your friends and family were like, what is wrong with you? Why did you leave? Actually, I think you sold, actually, if I'm correct.
I did. It's kind of a funny story because I didn't plan to sell the business. I actually was the business that I bought was a home repair and remodeling franchise. And the model was an owner operator model. So more of a lifestyle business, which created a great lifestyle, but I wanted to be more of a hands-off sort of an executive model. You think about McDonald's, for example,
right.
The guy that owns the franchise probably is not working in the store. He's probably, owning several and running the business. That's what I aspired to. And so I hired a coach, became a good friend of mine, and he helped teach me how to create an executive model for my little home repair business. And at the end of this coaching program, it was a 3-year program, he gave me a free business valuation. So he said, if you take this certificate and you give it to this business consultant, he'll value your business and tell you what it's worth. So you can see if what we've done together has been valuable or not. So I was intrigued, and I called the business broker up, and he was an attorney here in town. And he said, hey, send me your financials and then let's meet. So I go into his office, and we have a few pleasantries, and he says, hey, what do you think your business is worth? And I'm like, I have no idea. And he said, well, just give me a number. Tell me what you think. So I threw out a number, and he said, Mike, I can sell your business for twice what you think it's worth. And I said, bullshit. There's no way. You're not, there's no chance you're going to sell this for twice what it's worth. He slid a contract across the desk. I kid you not. This is a true story. He had it all filled out. He said, all you need to do is sign it and I'll get it sold. Tyson, 90 days later, I'm in an attorney's office, signed like on one of the big conference room tables, lined with papers all the way around. I signed my name probably 40 or 50 times. I don't even know what I signed. And I walked out of there with one of those big checks.
Yeah.
I had just sold my business. First place I went was to the bank and paid off my house. And I just was like, unbelievable experience, but I had no plans to sell it. And so I had no idea what I was going to do. I had this nice payday and huge blessing to my family, but I had no idea what I was going to do. So it was sort of serendipitous that I sold it. It wasn't a strategic, acquisition with somebody.
Right.
But that operation that I sold was Omaha and Lincoln, and I ended up selling the other two. I had one in South Dakota and a couple in Arizona, and I sold those locations to the people that managed because it just didn't make sense for me to keep, trying to keep my home base was gone. So it didn't make sense to keep the rest of them. But yeah, it was not planned, but it was a huge blessing.
Are you familiar with Codie Sanchez?
I am not.
So I'll explain to everybody that if you're not. So she's, I think she's great. She was a venture capitalist or something along those lines. She worked in banking. She was a journalist. She did a bunch of things. She teaches buying businesses. And I think that the thing that is interesting about what you were talking about was how great of an opportunity for somebody that wants this lifestyle business to walk in and have a customer base, a track record, years and years in businesses. Most businesses fail within 3 to 5 years. And here you go. You can walk in, you can buy this business. Maybe you don't have the money. There's creative ways of doing things, seller financing. There's lots of things, SBA and stuff. I'll link to her if you guys are interested in this. But not only is it just about you sold and probably got a life-changing amount of money, but also if you're interested in the entrepreneur life and you see a business that's already there, maybe you could walk them and say, would you be interested in selling? Maybe people like you are like, I never thought about it, and you could suddenly get yourself into, maybe you're buying a job, maybe you're not, whatever it is, you can always change that and do things, but there's opportunity there. And I love that, that concept. And I think that can free a lot of people into wealth.
It sure can. I think you're spot on. So a typical SBA loan that's done, at least when I sold, was what was called an 80-10-10. So they would loan 80% of the purchase price. The seller would generally carry back 10%, and the borrower, the buyer, had to bring 10%. So, $1 million business, you have to come up with $100,000 in cash, right? Now, depending upon what it produces, that might be a great deal. If it's producing good revenue, it could be a great deal because it services the debt, it services the seller carry, and it takes care of your equity because you get a return on it. So you're absolutely right. The other piece of it that's really cool is if you buy an existing business, there's the upfront risk of startup failure is greatly reduced when you have something that's proven track record. And the SBA typically won't lend on something that doesn't have at least 3 years of tax returns.
Right.
And so while the majority of the business fail in the first year and it drops off precipitously after a couple of years, and if you have 3 years of good tax returns, it really reduces the risk on buying something that's existing. So that's great advice.
Yeah, I'm constantly looking. I have alerts set up. Folks, listen, you don't have to, these businesses, $5, $10, $50, $25, $30,000. You can get vending machine businesses as you want to maybe a little aside. I've seen them $20,000, $30,000. These guys already have customers. They have machines there. All you got to do is service them. It wouldn't take a lot if you're interested. I also buy websites from people. There's things you can go that are already cash flowing. You go in there, you change a few things. I've bought things for $1,000. And you come around and it's got clients, it's got things. These are opportunities. I know real estate is a great thing, and that's your area of expertise. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But there's opportunities. The thing I missed about I early on in my life when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, the thing that I missed, I think the key lesson in is there, and I didn't learn from it. And I look back and I notice people don't teach us as well. The key thing I missed was you need income. You need a business or something like that. And so many people, and I got caught up in this, was you just jump ahead to the real estate part.
Yeah.
And I didn't learn until I was a lot older. And actually I reread the book, I think the 20th anniversary, I reread it. And I said, I missed the part about owning businesses and making money and being in that column before you can jump to the next column. So I think this is a way to get into that column. Well, maybe you still have a job, or maybe you're unemployed or something's going on where you can jump into that column. So then we can go talk to people like Michael and get into the investing column.
Well, I love that advice, Tyson, because what you're talking about in Rich Dad Poor Dad is owning assets.
Right.
And by definition, an asset is something that pays you to own it. So think about what that could be. A vending machine, simple, very simple business. If it pays you to own it, then it's an asset.
Right.
And so how do you buy more assets? Buying a rental house, of course, that's an asset. Buying a business, whether it's a service business, a lawn mowing business, it could be anything.
Yeah.
If it's paying you to own it, now you've taken some of the pressure off of you having to trade your time for dollars. And the more you can shift that energy away from trading time for dollars to owning more and more assets, the more time freedom you have. The more time freedom you have, typically you enjoy yourself a little bit more because you can make more decisions. You have more liberty and autonomy, right? And I think that's ultimately what we want for us and for our loved ones is to have the ability to make decisions about what we want to do, when we want to do it, with who we want to do it. And if you don't have assets that are paying you and you're stuck working for someone else, trading your time, even if you're making, $500,000 a year, you're still giving your time for that money. And how do you ever get your time freedom, which is really the greatest commodity we have, because it's a limited and finite commodity. This might be our last day, Tyson.
Yeah, exactly.
We might be done.
Mhm.
And if we are, I will have felt that I've lived a blessed life, and I'll feel fortunate. But there's others who are going to say, if this is it, I wish I would have taken the risk and bought this asset. And like to your point, it doesn't need to start big. It can start small, and one domino tips and then the next one does. And before you know it, you end up with 25 vending machines, and then you hire somebody to run the route for you. And you go find another business,
Yep.
So I love the entrepreneurial advice. I, of course, as an entrepreneur, I can't imagine doing something else.
Yes.
And there's risks and there's challenges, but man, the upside is so exciting.
But that's good. There's risk. It's good. There's challenges. Like you said, you failed and you learned and you got up, and that's part of success.
It is.
Everything in this world that we hold now, somebody failed making it until they were successfully making it. And that's why we have these things now.
Gosh, what a great insight. That's so true. It doesn't always happen. You don't snap your fingers and all of a sudden it exists. There's many iterations along the way, and most of them are throwaway until you get the one that works. Yeah. Great advice.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like you took a little bit of a sabbatical after you sold, and then you started, buying and starting and selling businesses. Is that how that went down?
Yeah. So I, after I sold the first 5 franchises, I bought and sold 2 other companies. One was a manufacturing company where I owned a minority share, ended up splitting the company in 2 and selling it to 2 separate parties. And then I bought and sold a sign company along the way.
What are some of the lessons, takeaways from that process?
So what's interesting, Tyson, is that every business has the same framework. It does not matter if it's a vending business that we've talked about or it's Coca-Cola. Every one of those businesses and everything in between has the same framework. And it's a 7-part framework, which is leadership, who's going to run it, marketing, how do you tell customers that it exists? You can have the best product in the world, nobody knows, you're out of business. You have a sales function. After they said they like it, how do you deliver it to or sell it to them? Then you have fulfillment, which is the delivery of. And you have back office and accounting. You collect the money. You have to find a way to account for it. Mm-hmm. Then you have HR, or that's part of that's part of the back office. Then you have innovation, which is thinking about how do I grow and improve. And the last piece is customer service. Every single business has to address those 7 critical functions in order to be successful. The business will scream at you either through lost sales or through increased sales, depending upon how well you pay attention to each of these things. So for example, if you say, I've got this great product and I don't want to market it, and maybe you do have the very best product, the number of people that are going to be able to buy that product is very limited because nobody knows about it, right? Versus you start telling people, hey, I've got this great product. And even if the product, frankly, is average or marginal, if there's a great reach with your marketing, you're probably going to sell the heck out of an average product. So those critical functions are key. And I think if you can learn the framework and learn that it is repeatable in every business, and make sure that you're honoring each of those 7 critical functions as a vending business, honor those 7 functions, you're going to have your odds of success increase greatly. You ignore some of those functions because let's say it's a side hustle and you don't market, or it's a side hustle and you don't go fill the machine, or it's a side hustle and you forget to collect the money, or it's a side hustle and you don't take care of it because from a maintenance standpoint, it breaks down and people get upset and they put a sign out of order on it. I mean, all of these things have to be accounted for. And I think that's really where the root of the problem lies, is people then have to trade their attention, their time to go take care of this side hustle. And so I tend to be, maybe wrongfully so, but I tend to be an all or nothing guy. If I'm going to start something, I'm not going to dabble in it because I don't want the risk of, my dad used to say, a guy who hunts 2 rabbits goes hungry.
Right.
It's hard enough to shoot 1 rabbit, right? But if you hunt 2 rabbits, you're going to go hungry. So I tend to pick the rabbit, hunt that thing down, kill it, eat it, and then go find another rabbit. And so I tend to be all in, and I'm not a good side hustle guy. So, if you want to trade places with me, don't take my advice, right? Or if you do, then take my advice. But if you don't, then don't. But it is about the framework, and it's about the consistency of each of those businesses, regardless if it's manufacturing or service or whatever. They all have the same functions.
Do you have a resource for this? How can we learn this framework and start to apply it if you were interested in business?
That's a framework that I created, and I actually have a visual that I can share with people if somebody's interested. It's called the 7-part framework. If you want to, I can share it with you, and you can link it in the notes or whatever is easiest.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, there's actually 2. It's the framework is built like a house. A visual is a house.
Okay.
Below grade, there's 2 other things that I didn't mention.
Okay.
One is operating principles, which are how are you going to govern yourself, and the bedrock or the footings of what you're building are founded in your beliefs. Who are you as a person? What do you stand for and stand against? And then on those, you put your operating principles, and then on top of that is leadership, sales, marketing, etc. But I'm happy to share that framework.
Yeah, that'd be great. And that, like everything in life, your foundation, you got to build a solid foundation, or your house isn't going to stand up.
That's it. Yep, that's it. The beautiful thing too, Tyson, about that is that the beliefs and operating principles are transferable. They also go from one business to the next. The 7-part framework I mentioned is a little bit different for each business. But the foundation, as you said, the operating principles, those are what you carry with you wherever you go. It's who you are and how you show up.
Yeah, I love this. What I'm thinking about when I hear this is, if you learn this framework, you can look at any business and say, oh, this 6 isn't working, 4 isn't doing very well. I can come in and I can switch, and I can get 6 and 4 working at things, and I can increase revenue. I can maybe decrease bottom line, whatever it is you can do. Now you suddenly have a more profitable business or acquisition, whatever you're doing.
That's it. No, that's exactly right. It gives you the ability to drill down on each of these 7 critical functions and say, we're great. Or a great example is the leadership one, where you have a lot of people selling businesses that are not truly sellers. They're actually don't wanters. They've given up on the business. They're not leading anything. And if all you did was step in and provide leadership, the rest of it would run brilliantly. But how do you identify that unless you know that's part of a framework and you drill down on it? And if you find a don't wanter and he's got a great marketing team, and a great sales team, and he's got all the operations going and accounting and everything's working, man, that could be a gold mine, because he's going to sell it for pennies on the dollar because he's checked out or she's checked out. It doesn't matter, right? They don't want it. I love don't wanters.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you can come in and, do it yourself. You could hire an amazing CEO or something along those lines. And then boom, like you're saying, you can double, triple these businesses, not necessarily literally, but metaphorically overnight.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. It's actually a great point too that you bring up, Tyson, which is know yourself, right? If you're a great salesperson, then maybe you do step in and handle the sales role. But then who's going to do the accounting? Typically, I'm going to say stereotypically, salespeople are not great accounting people.
Sure.
And vice versa. So know your strengths, know what you're good at, fill those voids, and you can outsource or do fractional, accounting or different things to offset that and grow into having your own staff. But each function has to be addressed. If you ignore it, the business will scream at you and say, hey, we're out of money, or we don't have any sales, or we have no leads, whatever it is, we got upset customers, right? It will require you to pay attention to those functions, whether you want to or not. It's just best to go into it knowing what they are and be wide-eyed and clear-eyed about addressing them up front.
We talked a lot about real estate. What it seems like everybody wants somehow, in some way or another, wants to get into real estate. What do you think is the biggest thing people are missing with that premise?
Well, I think it actually goes right back to what we were just talking about, which is when you buy a piece of real estate, very, very rarely is it passive. Meaning, if you're, let's say you had $50,000 and you're going to buy a rental house, you got an inheritance and you're going to buy your first rental. So you go to the bank, you get pre-approved, you buy the house, you rent it out. Well, now you've got an operating business. There's now 7 functions of that rental business that have to be managed. And what so few people recognize is that they do have to answer the phone. They do have to call or deal with maintenance. They do have to collect the rent or file an eviction. They have to manage all of that. And it can end up being overwhelming for them, right? So for those folks that aren't interested in doing active working on that 7-part framework and running a real estate portfolio, which having one property is still a real estate portfolio, by the way,
Right.
because it requires all the same functions. The bigger you get, the more demands. And you get to a point where if you're not at scale, like people typically get to 4, 5, or 6 houses, if that's what they're buying, and they say no mas, because that's enough tenants and it's enough noise, it's enough operational attention that it needs, that their wife starts to squeal, or their husband says no more, you got to sell these assets, or you start missing kids' games, or whatever it is, and it starts to stress the family to the point where you say it's not worth it. Because the truth is, the secret, Tyson, is that on a single family rental, you might cash flow a couple $100 a month if you're lucky.
Yeah.
It's not a get rich quick thing. It's not going to replace your income quickly. It's more of an appreciation play, meaning the asset should go up over time if you buy right, and a depreciation play, which is a tax play.
Right.
And it is a cash flow play. And so a lot of people get confused and think, I'm going to buy this asset and it's going to be great. And they realize that it's just a bunch of work. So for those that don't want to deal with all that work, a better option is to find somebody like us or another person who's already got the system and the machine built with all the processes, all the 7 parts of the framework are addressed, and has a team, and invest your money alongside somebody like us that says, I'm going to make money when you make money, and you go along for the ride, and you have the benefits of ownership, but you don't have the operational headaches of managing those 7 critical functions. And you do that through a real estate syndication or investing in a fund. And that's one good way to do it. But then you have to have the capital, right?
Right.
And so the perfect person for us is somebody who's got good disposable income, high income earner, wants real estate, but is afraid to do it on their own because the distraction of it, the switching cost of taking their eye off the ball that's already producing to go try to spin up something else that they don't know anything about. That's really who we serve the best, because they've got the capital, they're already successful somewhere else, and now we help them accelerate their growth by investing right alongside us. If the people want to go hands-on, I highly recommend that as an option if you have the bandwidth and the appetite to go and do that work, because then you're going to reap all the benefits instead of sharing it with me.
Right. Is that why you guys decided to do like a vertical integration?
It is. Absolutely it is, because we wanted to have control of construction, property management, the full life cycle of the asset. You hire a third party to do some of these things that, like, GCs are easy to find, but they're hard to manage.
Right.
The quality, the schedule, the pricing, the vendors, it's hard to manage. The subs, right? There's a lot there.
Yeah.
The same when it comes to property management, a third party property manager who's, especially when you're buying assets that need some work, they don't want to deal with tenants who are frustrated that there's an extra dumpster in the parking lot, or there's trash blown across the yard, or there's noise because somebody's working on the property. They would rather have a turnkey asset where it's just collect rents, send out maintenance guys. Simple. When you're doing value add and there's a lot of work to be done, the third party managers don't have the I'm going to say long suffering is the word that comes to mind, because you have to tolerate a lot, both as a tenant and as the third party manager. And if you don't have the upside, meaning you're not an owner in the deal and you don't benefit from all of that hard work, then why would you do it for 6, 5, 6, 7% of the rent?
Right.
So that's why we are vertically integrated, because we want to have owners at each level, because there's a struggle at each level, and we don't win unless the deal is successful at the end. And so our interests are fully aligned that way.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, it seems it's probably better for your bottom line as well, because the margins are probably thin within each of these things. But when you combine them all together, you probably get a better net, right?
No question. In fact, for example, on our construction, our project management cost is 5%. That's over and above what the actual invoices are from the vendors and from the subcontractors. Most of the time in construction, if they're using a construction management model, they're charging 10% overhead and 10% profit. So they're marking it up 20%.
Right.
We're marking it up 5% just to cover our cost of paying bills and managing the construction. So there's immediate savings that we can drive right into the project, which at the end is equity growth, which benefits us because we're partners on the deal, and the investors. So they get all that upside with us. It's key.
Right. And then that would probably lead into like you're talking about the, is it limitless income or something like that? So you build this project for 10 million, let's just say, and then you get it appraised for 20. So now you cash out, refi that. So you paid off your initial 10. Now you got 10 infinite returns right there, after that, right?
Yeah. So let me give you a real example. We bought our first large multifamily, and it's relatively large. It was 88 units. Mm-hmm. We'd never done that before. We've done single family and small multifamily, 6, 8, 10, 12 unit buildings. The 88 unit was a little bit daunting. And so we did not want to bring in any investor capital because we weren't sure we could pull it off. So we bought the building. The day we bought it, it appraised for $4 million. Mm-hmm. We paid just under $3 million for it. So we had day one equity of $1 million, which was great. The seller did a carryback. So I had a bank in first position. I had a seller doing a carryback. And then we had all this work to do to the property. We took our existing portfolio, brought it to the bank and said, we'd like to leverage this for a line of credit, which they gave us $1 million line of credit, just using the equity that we had in our portfolio. We used that $1 million to put into the asset. So we bought it at 3, we put in $1 million. So now our basis is at 4. It originally appraised at 4. 2 years later, it appraised at 7. We got a loan of a little over $5 million. We owed 4. We paid off the first mortgage, we paid off the line of credit and the seller carry, and we walked away at the time of closing with over $1 million, and we still own the asset. So we have none of our own money into this deal. It pays us about $15,000 a month in free cash flow after all expenses. And the tenants are paying off the mortgage.
Right.
That's an infinite return.
Yes.
That's a life-changing event.
Right.
That's the kind of deals that we said, once that was a light bulb moment for me where I said, we can help a lot of families do the same thing. We have limited capital. We don't have the ability to buy multiple 100-unit buildings. But if I get investor help, we can rinse and repeat that same process over and over again and provide those same returns to our investors. It's a win for both of us. We get to build our portfolio. The investors, our base model is to double their money in a 5-year hold or less. So if you can double your money in that period of time, that's a 20% return annually. It's a pretty incredible process.
And that's better than the average stock market doubling of about every 7 years or so. So that is pretty good.
Yep.
What about? Go ahead.
I was just going to say there are risks associated,
of course.
Right? You got to make sure the property is good. And you got to make sure the operator is good.
Right.
So it's not all a bed of roses, but if you find the right deal and you're disciplined in what you buy and you have an operator that's got a proven track record, it can be a very, very powerful investment strategy to grow your wealth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, do your homework, find great people. And then once you got that team in place, these things can start compounding.
That's right. No, that's right.
What about maybe on a small scale, maybe somebody's like, maybe I'll get a duplex or a quadplex or something. I'll live in some. What do you think about something like that?
I think it's great as long as they're willing to be active.
Okay.
Right. It comes back to, are you gonna honor the 7 functions of the business? Because the business is merciless. It will require you to honor those things. And as long as you go into it wide-eyed and clear-eyed and say, yeah, I'm okay with that, then a house hack, for example, is a great way to start for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hear a lot of people doing that. I don't think I could do it. It's not. I'd rather I'd rather jump in a deal and buy a whole apartment building than have to worry about my neighbor messing up things.
Well, the other piece about the larger deals, Tyson, is there's such efficiency in when you have 50 units to renovate,
right? You
have almost no switching costs for the guys. The crews, they're going in and they're doing the same thing in each one. The extra flooring or extra paint or hardware just rolls to the next one. So you have a lot less waste. Yeah. You have the same floor plan typically, or a couple of floor plans, and they just get really efficient and really good at it. It's not sexy. It's actually boring. But the returns are so much better when you can be really efficient than they are on a one-off single family, or a duplex or even a 3 or 4. It's the efficiencies of scale are real in these larger multifamily. And that's what's exciting about really building wealth. You can do it one-off. And we have 200 some single families. So I'm a proponent of that for sure. It's just compared to the efficiency and scale that you get on a multifamily, right. It's just way easier and much more efficient to do a multifamily. It takes more money and it takes a team. It's almost impossible to do it yourself. In fact, I don't know if it is possible to do it yourself. But if you're comfortable with it, then I think those downsides, and I think it's a better way to go.
I prefer, I think, the less sexy things, not trying to make an app, it's a moonshot or some startup. And that it's great if that's your dream and your ambition. I say, hey, if you want to go for it, go for it. But I think a lot of people, especially as we've gone on in our economic prosperity in America, the less sexy things kind of fall to the wayside, that blue collar, those things where there's so much money there's so much wealth in welding, in having a plumbing company, in doing these things. People, are, they're really missing out on, like you're saying, building this generational wealth, building a family business like you've built. There's so much wealth in the unsexy.
There is. And we want our business to be boring because I want my kids to be able to understand it, and I want them to be able to be good at it. And I don't want it to be super complex. Like, how does it endure if it's really complex? Right. I think the simpler it can be, the more sustainable it can be. Mm-hmm. And so, in real estate has been, and I would guess will be, maybe AI would change this, I don't know, but the number one wealth creating tool on the planet. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think the difference would be AI will probably have a few people that'll get crazy rich, and the rest of us will use it. Mm-hmm. Where real estate is just more accessible to the common man to be able to create wealth.
Right, because we all every place around the world, they need buildings, they need places to live and stuff like that. Yeah, I do think there'll probably be a couple of one-person billion-dollar companies from AI. That's probably something that definitely is going to happen. But
I would agree.
Like you're saying, generational wealth for thousands of years now, and this is how people have preserved wealth, stored wealth, and all these different types of avenues is through real estate or some type of property, land, and things.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's right.
And it's probably just going to get more valuable as it becomes less and less available as well, right?
Well, in my lifetime, and I would ask you, have you seen the price of labor and materials go down?
Not typically, especially in the past 4 or 5 years. It's not been a smooth ride.
Yeah, and so what we're buying is existing properties at less than replacement cost. For example, we're closing tomorrow on a 30-unit building that we're buying at $70,000 per unit. Mm-hmm. Today, to rebuild that, it's $150,000 per unit minimum.
Wow,
it's incredible. Like, how do you? And the rents, by the way, on the $70,000 a unit building are about 20% less than the rents on the $150,000 per unit building. So do the math. Yeah, it'd be sexier to have a brand new building and get a 20% bump in rents. Mm-hmm. But I can renovate these units and get almost the same rents at half the cost of the property.
Yeah. And in a 150 unit, I would imagine that's like builder basics probably versus these $70,000 units. You could put a little bit more luxury floors or counters or something, and then you can bump your rent.
Absolutely. We do. We call it our HGTV standard. So it's it's granite countertops, soft close cabinets, LVP flooring. All the fixtures are new. Electrical fixtures are new. The walls are gray. The trim is white. It's the same in all of them. Again, it's not sexy. No. But when somebody walks in there and they see everything is new, especially when like, I don't know if it's this way where you're at, but in Omaha, all of the new construction is on one part of town, in one part of town. And if you don't work out there, you have a long commute to get to where you work. And we're buying in town where the workforce wants to live. Mm-hmm. And we're repurposing these buildings, leveling up that property to make them nice. So it's still affordable and it's close to work, rather than sending them out, for a 30-minute commute one way to the edge of town where they don't know anybody. Their community isn't there. Their neighborhood that they leave is they have to start over basically. It's just not what we do. And so we really like the existing properties and improving them where they're at.
Yeah, here in Arizona, the Phoenix area, we have probably a bit of mix of that. I noticed downtown, they're tearing down a lot of the houses
Sure.
and stuff that have kind of left their way, and they're building high rises there. There's a lot of land. It's kind of spread out. There's some communities, like you're saying, you're talking 45 minutes an hour. In some of these places, there's just one little road into this community.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the traffic, it's unreal. But yeah, I like your strategy there. I like how you're thinking that forethought of like, yeah, we can go where it's fun and sexy outside of town. Maybe the costs are a little lower, the buildings are a little cheaper, but your demographic might be different. I mean, people might, like you're saying, not willing to move too far out of away from town and stuff like that. So that's interesting.
Yeah, the urban center where we're at is where all the jobs are. And so the commute from, in our case, West Omaha to Midtown and downtown is brutal in the morning and in the evening. So a lot of people are just wanting to live there, live in Midtown. There's a lot of amenities. There's a lot of, the university is there, all the, the civic arenas and things where there's entertainment and concerts and sporting events. There's a population of people that prefer to live closer to where they work and to where the entertainment is. Now there's a population that wants to live in the suburbs too. I think those are the ones that end up buying the houses because they're starting a family, right? And that makes sense. But for those that are not yet starting a family or have a family and want them to be in the more urban area, that's the community we serve.
Very interesting. I'd like to go back to tactical empathy. Could we talk a little bit about that?
Of course. Yeah. Are you talking about like the utilitarian feel of that word? Or are you talking about what does it mean?
However you want to explain it, what does it mean to you? I'm familiar with it, but if you could enlighten the audience, how you think about it, how maybe you use it.
Yeah. So it's funny because when I first heard tactical empathy, it was sort of on the end of my journey of being really utilitarian in my view of others, meaning, can you help me? And if you can, I'm interested in you. And if you can't, get out of my way. So as I picked this tactical empathy, this book up talking about tactical empathy, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I bet I can probably use this to get more of an advantage. And what I quickly realized is I couldn't have been more wrong in my view of how it worked. Tactical empathy is really a set of tools that, when used appropriately, are the most respectful and honoring way to communicate with somebody else. I liken it to like learning to play the piano, the tools of mirroring and labeling and summarizing and no-oriented questions, which are some of the tools that are made up or that make up tactical empathy, are like the chords on a piano. You play one, it sounds pretty good. You play another one next to it and they go together, it starts to make music. And I think that's how the tactical empathy works, where you end up drawing people out and you get what Chris would call black swans, or the things that they normally wouldn't want to say, but because they're comfortable, they feel like there's trust and there's empathy, that they're willing to share information. And by the way, that's a two-way street. It isn't just I'm manipulating someone to draw them out. It's I'm sharing too. Just like our conversation has been, frankly, it's been very much of a give and take. And I think that's how the tactical empathy works. Once you reach a place where there's comfort and you get to what Chris would call that's right, that's when collaboration starts. That's when people start working on the problems together. And the beauty of that, Tyson, is that if you work on a problem together, you're both bought into the solution that you arrive at, and the odds of implementing the solution go way up because both parties have bought into the solution. A lot of times people say yes just to get you to shut up, and then they never implement what they said yes to. That's because you've convinced them to do something they didn't want to do. Tactical empathy allows you to work together and collaborate, get on the same side of the issue instead of facing each other, arguing over it. And when you can get on the same side of the issue, it allows you again to agree on the solution and then implement it together. It's really powerful.
It is. Learning those concepts, you've got to, in a way, you've got to retrain how you talk and how you speak. It's very interesting. I love it. I'm glad I was able to introduce my son and stuff to him when he was younger. So I'm hoping some of those natural habits we have of getting people to say yes all the time and just kind of persuading and pushing people to do what we want. Hopefully he doesn't learn any of those like I think we did. What is your favorite of them, and maybe some examples on how you use it?
Yeah. So the most powerful, well, gosh, they're all so powerful. I'd say that the no-oriented question is probably the simplest for people.
Mm-hmm.
So you can ask any question and have it be a no-oriented question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, when you call somebody and you say, do you have a second?
Mm-hmm.
Another way of saying it is, have I interrupted you?
Mm-hmm.
You're asking the same thing, which is, do you have a minute for me?
Right.
But when you say, have I interrupted you? The no answer, which makes them feel safe,
mm-hmm.
is actually the affirmative answer that you're looking for. So it makes it easier to get the affirmative answer you're looking for than it is to say, are you busy?
Right.
If you say, are you busy? They're like, well, I don't know. What do you want?
Yeah.
Like, do I need to be busy, or do I need to not, like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a very simple example of the power of a no-oriented question. And we use those all the time. We call it going for no, or I think we learned that from Chris.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably the most powerful is sort of this you've used the mirrors, which is repeating the last 1 to 3 words, and that's intended to just have them respond a second time a new way. Mm-hmm. Or you use, in which you've used several really good labels. It seems like, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's intended to draw out, more, even if you're wrong. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the fears people have in using them is, well, what if I say, it seems like you're really upset? And they say, I'm not upset. I'm just fine. Well, mm-hmm. That's okay, because they just corrected you. And now you've misread them. And because you now can read them appropriately, it's going to serve the conversation better. Right. So it's not a bad thing to get corrected.
Right.
But I think the most powerful for getting to collaboration is a summary. And a summary is risky, because a lot of times when people are summarizing what someone else is saying, if they do it well, they are fearful that might come across as, I'm agreeing with you, even if I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have somebody that you're adamantly disagreeing with, and if you summarize what they've said, the fear could be, well, if I say that, they're going to think they're right and I'm agreeing. It's the exact opposite happens. You can disagree with somebody vehemently, but if you can summarize what they've said and they say, that's right, what happens in that moment is they've somehow in their mind said, Mike gets me.
Mm-hmm.
Tyson understands who I am and what I'm about. And it's at that moment where their guard drops, and then the real conversation can start. Where most people fail is they use terms like you should, you need to, why aren't you, why don't you? And they're trying to, interrupt so they can, get off of their mind what they have on their mind, because they don't want to forget. They got to win the argument. And if you can get comfortable living in this space of asking questions, allowing the conversation to go where it needs to go, and get to that thin place of that's right, then you can start working together on the solution. That's a very, very, very powerful dynamic that most oftentimes that I've found yields results that are better than I even anticipated going in. Again, one of my favorite things that Chris says, never be so sure of what you want. Never be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't accept something better.
Mm-hmm.
Which in these kinds of collaborative conversations, I'm shocked at the number of times the outcome is better than I expected, just because of the way we handled the conversation. And so it makes you a better dad. It makes you a better husband. It makes you a better business partner. It makes you a better negotiator. It makes you a better human being.
Yes.
And one of my greatest joys, Tyson, is when I hear my own kids talking to each other using these tools. They hated it to start with because they know I read a book and they knew I was practicing, and they could hear me missing these chords. I'd screw it up. Like, oh, that sounds terrible, Dad. Don't do that. Don't never split the difference with me. Now they're doing it with each other. And the reason it works is because it's so respectful. it truly does honor the other person. And man, what a gift that Chris has given the world through this book, and what a gift it's been for me to share it with my family and with those I care about. It's been amazing.
Michael, that's right. Another one. I don't remember if it was in the book or if it's in his master class or something. Is switching why and what. So instead of accusing somebody, why did you do that? And say, what was the reason you did that, or something along those lines, right? That one, if you just, and to me, it makes me have to pause, because of course, I think the way we just are taught to talk or something, it's like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You've got to stop yourself just for that split second and say, how do I switch this to a what question? That is a huge thing. You really disarm people a lot when you say you're accusing somebody, why'd you spill the milk? And saying, what happened? Well, is everything okay? What,
Yeah. There's super powerful, dude. I'm it's called a calibrated question.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So it's what and how questions instead of why. How am I supposed to do that? Or, take me back to when you made this decision, what was going through your head, those sorts of things. The interesting thing is that the why question is actually very, very powerful as well, when it's used in the appropriate place.
Right. Meaning,
instead of saying, why did you do that? You're using it in a way of saying, in not in a confrontational situation, but let's say you're making a buying decision, and I'm selling you something, and you're going to take something back to your team, and we're reaching an agreement. And I ask the why question of, tell me, when your team asks you about this solution, why would you recommend that you go forward with this? What are you going to tell your team? And now that it's turned into them selling themselves and selling you on their reasoning for deciding to go with you. So why is appropriate if it's used in that context, because then it's cementing in their mind their reasoning, and it's going to then help you actually shape that conversation for them and with them. So you can go back to the team and say, well, it sounds like this is what you're proposing as the main benefits. What if you added this? Do you think that would be helpful? You see how it's very collaborative in that moment, right?
Yes, that's right.
It's super respectful. And it's also drawing out what's really in the mind of the other person, so that when they do go deliver that message to the team that's going to make the decision, what they're going to say. And that goes back to, yes means nothing without how, right? If he said, yeah, I'm in, I got to go convince the team. Well, how are you going to do that? Right? Why would you take this back to your team and tell them to do this? Why is this good for you guys? That's a powerful why question. Not why are you doing this? Right? That's a defensive. The defenses go up.
Right.
And that's where the accusatory. Yep. You've studied this stuff, dude. You're good at it.
I love it, because like we're talking about here, not only do you pull out like reasons and objections. I believe it was in his book where he's talking about that piece of land that they wanted to build like a strip mall on, and everybody and their mom came to this guy, and he didn't want to sell. Nobody could figure out why. And then the person that wound up doing is like, what's going on? He's like, I want something to leave my grandkids. I want a legacy. And they're like, how about you name them all after you? He's like, okay, sold, deal.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
But when you're listening and you're understanding, like, what is going on here? Why do you have an objection? What is happening? When you bring that person to your side, right, and you're allowing them to speak and let their guard down a bit, open up to you, and you can start to uncover the obstacles, you get the deal done. And it wasn't necessarily, I'm not talking about being selfish. We're not talking about anything like that. It's a collaborative thing, and everybody, Absolutely. It's beyond win-win, because that's not what we're about, right? Win-win is something is probably given up in the middle there.
Well, it goes back to, I think, how they feel. Because if they feel heard and understood, and they feel like you get me, like you understand me, the odds of getting a deal done, if there's one to be had, goes way up. I like to talk, when I'm talking to the guys that do our acquisitions, I say that the Black Swan tools, the never split the difference tools, are not a guarantee of success. They will never, ever, if you use them, they will never guarantee your success, but they give you the best odds of success. And I promise you, if you don't use them, you're not giving yourself the best odds. So use the tools and give yourself the best odds of success. And success may not be a deal. A success may be we walk away from a deal because we found a black swan that would have, had we found later, ruined the deal to begin with. So never be so never be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't accept something better. Sometimes a no is a better answer than when you walked in the room saying, I have to buy this, or this, I'm going to win this deal, because you might uncover something through this collaborative approach that says, this isn't right for me. And that's okay too. Actually, it's better because now you can go focus on something that is a win.
I'm a huge fan of Chris. What was it like when you were able to connect with him? How did that come about? What was it like?
You know, he would have this conversation as if you and I are. He's very approachable. He practices what he preaches. He's very sincere. He asks the no or any questions. He mirrors and labels. It's you're sitting in a master class when you have a conversation with him, and he's a delight to be around. The way it came about was sort of serendipitous. I think just because I was a super consumer of his content and subscribed to everything he ever put out, I got an email one day from somebody that represents him, one of his agents or his agent, I don't know if it's one of, and said, hey, he's writing a book. Would you have any interest in submitting a story? And if we like the story, then you might get in the book. So I submitted a story. They came back and said, we like it. We want to give you a ghostwriter and an editor so that it sounds better, right? Because you're not an author.
Right.
So they did, and they made the stories better, easier to read, and, you know, more digestible, and not so many grammatical errors. And when they presented it, it ended up making the cut. And so I ended up being one of the contributing authors, which is a huge honor.
I bet. What has that whole experience maybe taught you or brought you from all of that? From the writing the book?
Yeah. So for me, that is a way to give back. Honestly, it was a way just to say thank you to Chris, and he gets all the credit for the book and all of the stories that are shared in the book. Everything is to honor what he's doing. He's changing the world. If people will take what he's doing and apply it, it's noble. And so to be able to give back, that's really my only purpose. It's opened doors to have great conversations with people like you and others that have been just amazing to me, to expand, you know, the people I know and can connect with. I've met a lot of great people. So it's been all positive. It's been all great.
And the book is Empathetic Leadership: How to Build Trust and Drive Results. I'll link that for you guys. And I'll link to Chris's stuff if you guys are interested in learning more and getting into these different things. We also have Freed by Real Estate. I love the name. There's tons of resources there if you're interested. If you guys qualify to get into some of your deals and stuff, we've got LinkedIn and Facebook. Anything else you want to point people to?
I don't think so. I think if you can share those things, that'd be great, Tyson. Absolutely. And just Freed by Real Estate website is the best way.
And like I said, folks, that everything will be in the show notes. Everything we talk about, links to all Michael's stuff. If you want to get in, you want to learn more, you guys' website's great. It really walks you guys through everything, lays everything out quite well.
Thank you.
One thing I love to do on the social community shows, I like to have a weekly challenge, whether it's implementing an idea we talked about, our concept, or maybe nothing at all. But I'd like to have you issue this week's challenge.
Interesting. You didn't prep me for this.
No.
Okay, so one of the most transformational things that I've ever done is what I'm going to challenge the listeners to do. And that is to, instead of running your life through Chronos time, meaning I get up at 6, I go to the gym at 7, I eat breakfast at 8, I go to work at 9, I take lunch at noon, I go home at 5. I get Friday and Saturday, I get Saturday and Sunday off. I go back on Monday. I get 2 weeks off in the summer or for vacation. I want you to, in this idea of having to earn time off, right? Like we work hard so that we get time off. I want to challenge that thinking and ask that you shift it to Kairos time. Kairos time is more to do with, it's time to go to bed. I'm tired. It's time to eat because I'm hungry. It's time to have the baby. It's time to harvest. There's no place on the clock for it, but it's what needs to happen now. It's the most important thing that can happen now. So with that context, I want each of the listeners to say, every day I'm going to start filling my bucket first. Sounds selfish, but the truth is, if you're going to show up and serve and be of value to those that you interact with, you have to be fully charged, because people are going to dip into your bucket and they're going to take out of it. And if it's not full, you've got nothing to give. So be selfish, take care of yourself first. I do what I call the hour of power. So every day in the morning for 1 hour, I don't do anything unless it's serving me. Drinking water, exercising, reading, studying something. And then when I show up, I can give my full self to the day and to those that need me. And that's my challenge for everyone on this podcast, is to fill your bucket first. Make sure you're prioritizing yourself, focusing on Chronos instead of Kairos, so that you're not feeling like you have to earn everything, but that you're fully charged to give what you can. That would be what I would hope people could do.
Michael, thank you. That was beautiful. I love that concept. I feel like it feels so natural, like the natural rhythmic. You wake with the sun, you do your thing, you have a siesta, you go to sleep, and you work the fields or whatever, metaphorically. That's beautiful.
Yep. Well, and I think ultimately the system of Kairos serves the entrepreneur way better than Chronos. We live in a world that is Chronos, right? We have these schedules, and that's okay, but it doesn't energize and excite most entrepreneurs, right? Most of us have seasons of we're feeling creative, or seasons of we've got our head down and we're grinding. And that's all good. It's just being able to honor that and not feel the conflict between the two can liberate a lot of folks. So I hope that's what that does.
Michael, thank you so much. This has been a beautiful conversation. You've been so vulnerable. I think inspiring to folks out there that may be in a dark place right now or just getting out of one. Your story, everything that's going on, the help. You went from, like you said earlier, being selfish, this is for me, and I'm going to take all the money and F everything else, to giving and being a light for people. I love it. Thank you so much for this beautiful, enlightening conversation.
You've done a great job guiding the conversation and asking great questions. I've enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you, Tyson.
All right. Wow. What a great, powerful interview. I love the vulnerability of this. I said this several times in the conversation. It's just so great. And then being willing to share, all these stories, the 7 frameworks. What a complete honor to have all that. As you folks know, there's no paywall. There's no premium content to subscribe to here at the Social Community Show. We give everything up front and only ask if you found value from this episode. I'd love it if you shared it with at least 2 other people. You guys can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. For episodes and links to everything we discussed here today, you can head over to socialchameleon.show. And until next time, keep learning, growing, and transforming into the person you want to become.